Welcome back to the Hive Doctor, your beekeeping mentor. It's my job to take the guesswork out of beekeeping for you. Today I'm going to be doing another book review, but this one's a little bit different and it's a little bit more special for me personally because it's a book that I authored myself titled The Intuitive Beekeeper Beyond Master Beekeeping. If you're interested in adding to your beekeeping library, then definitely stick around. Today on this episode of Reading Rainbow, the Hive Doctor, I want to go over what's inside this book, what's going to make it special for you. I want you to see what's inside so that you can feel confident about getting this book and it being something that adds to your beekeeping experience. There are 9 chapters in this book. I'm going to go through and give you the title of each one and just a brief breakdown of what that chapter is about. I want to give Jennifer Moore a shout out and a thank you for writing the foreword to my book. She's a northern beekeeper in a much colder climate than what I live in, but we touched base through Instagram and learned of one another's mutual interest in keeping bees as natural as possible and environments that allow honeybees to thrive and everything else around them. So chapter 1 is about assessing a hive before inspection. This chapter is primarily about honing your observation skills. This is before you ever even open up a hive cover and start peeking around inside. What can you learn by observing the hive entrance and the ground around it, or what's going on in the environment in your location? It talks about we as beekeepers being more aware about the time of the year it is so that we can assess a hive before inspection. We should begin to naturally have an instinct about what a hive should look like during the different seasons of the year. And so that during each of those seasons, when we get into a beehive to do an inspection, we should almost know what to expect. And when we see something that we do not expect, then it's an opportunity to learn and diagnose what's going on with that particular hive in a specific scenario. Chapter 2 is going to talk about how to assess a hive during an inspection. What are we going to find? What should we do with what we find? And I give you examples in this chapter that are specific to the seasons. We go over an example from the spring, the summer, fall, and winter. And I walk you through assessing a hive with theoretical conditions so that I can give you an example of how you should be thinking and working through methodically so that you are not stumbling through a hive, not knowing what you're doing or feeling insecure or knowing that you wish you knew more, but you just don't know what that is. This is going to help give you that cornerstone so that you can begin to build your own solid foundation. In chapter 3, we finally talk about what to do with your assessment from the hive inspection. So chapter 1, observing a hive before inspection, pre-hive inspection. Number 2, actually getting your nose into the beehive. And number 3, what to do with what you have found. And this chapter is all about taking action. In chapter 3, I give you a couple of examples of what to do. For example, if we find that a hive is queenless or there's robbing going on, what do we do when we see those things happening? And I walk you through a 3-step process about how to actually take action. In fact, let me go and just tell you what that is. Step 1, identifying that there is a problem. If there's no problem at all, great. You've got a good hive, you can close it up and move on to the next one. But what do we do when we do see a problem? Step 2 is resource assessment. What resources do you currently have in this hive that has the problem, or perhaps another hive that could help the one in question? And number 3, resource disbursement. Now it's time to shuffle those resources around so that we can give the bees what they need to actually fix the problem. Moving on to chapter 4 is anticipating your bees' needs. Not your bees' knees, your bees' needs. And this directly correlates with planning ahead. When you know what your bees are going to need, you can start working on that sooner rather than later. And the way we start with anticipating the needs of your colonies is first by observing, the thing that we learned in chapter 1. And then I talk about what must be done for all colonies. No matter if you've got 1 hive as a hobby beekeeper, 100 hives as a small scale beekeeper, or 2,000 hives as a commercial beekeeper. These things in this chapter go over what must be done for all colonies. And I'm going to list those for you here. All colonies must have some kind of regimen for pest and disease management. All colonies must be supered for a honey flow. All colonies must have their honey harvested. And I know that one's kind of touchy, but wait till you read the book and tell me what you think afterwards. And all hives must be prepared for the winter, no matter what degree of winter you may have. And finally, all beekeeping equipment must be maintained. And we end the chapter with helping you understand how to manage your hive equipment. And you do so using 4 steps: assessing your colony needs, the environmental circumstances that are going on at the time, colony management, as in hive management, and finally, equipment management for your bees. How can you best utilize your equipment so that your bees thrive and you as a beekeeper have the most fun? Chapter 5 is talking about working with the honey flow. Some beekeepers call it a nectar flow. You'll probably mostly hear me call it a honey flow because that's the way I learned it. But either way, it means the same thing. The key idea in this chapter is to help you identify when a honey flow is happening, which plants in your area are offering that abundant nectar, and how to best work with the flow so that you and your bees can maximize your goals. So in a honey flow, what to look for and how to know when it starts. You've got to observe the plant life. We talk about whitening of the comb, how it's a sign of incoming resources. Building out bare frames. Bees don't really like to build out bare frames unless they have enough resources coming in to do so. And that primarily only happens during a honey flow. You're going to find that the weight of your hives increase. You might even notice an aroma in your apiary from the smell of ripening honey. And of course, the most obvious thing is going to be bloom. What is blooming right now that is making so much honey that your bees are bringing in? And then we talk about how to work with the honey flow so that you can maximize honey production or whatever your goals are, but also so that you give your bees enough room to do what they need to do without swarming and leaving your beekeeping equipment behind. Chapter 6, we're going to go from working with the flow to working with the bees. Now, this is especially fun because you can actually use the bees' habits and instinctual tendencies to your advantage. Like if you've got a brand new box of bare frames and you need the bees to draw that out with wax, when is the best time to do that? A honey flow, of course. But there's a lot of things to consider when working with the bees. We need to respect their space, study their communication so that we understand how they function. We need to provide a suitable environment, ideally one of sustainability, using biodynamic methods. Those are big words, you have to look them up yourself. We need to have regular hive inspections, and that doesn't mean once a week or twice a week. It means depending on the time of year. The time of year and the tasks at hand will dictate how often you have regular hive inspections. And we need to practice responsible beekeeping techniques. We need to implement sustainable beekeeping practices, such as using organic treatments for pests and disease, avoid chemical pesticides in the vicinity of hives, and promote natural hive development. Also, you may consider becoming a certified beekeeper to stay updated on best practices so that you're always learning. It's important to remember that beekeeping is a symbiotic relationship. And I'm not talking about varroa mite, that's a parasitic relationship. The symbiotic relationship between beekeeper and honeybee and the plant kingdom is an important cycle for us as beekeepers to understand, so that we can work with the bees rather than against them for our own gain. It's a partnership. It requires care and attention. It requires specific hive management. One of the most fun things in beekeeping is learning your own ways of doing things and honing it down to a skill that works for you and your bees the same. Harvesting honey. What a fun time of year. And that actually helps to maintain a healthy hive and to keep your hives from swarming, because let's face it, none of us really like to see our bees swarm. And of course, sustainable practice like I mentioned earlier. And we should always be educating ourselves with some of the more up-to-date research. And lastly, having a respect for nature is going to be one of the most advantageous things that we do. Number 7, we're going to be talking about queen keeping. You've heard of beekeeping, this is queen keeping. When we pay attention to the quality of our honeybee queen, everything else in the colony will follow in a healthy, natural manner. This chapter talks about the queen's role in the hive and its importance, how a colony requires minimal disturbance, and how instead of looking for the queen every time you go into a hive, you should look for evidence of a queen. And when you're looking for evidence, you're going to also come across the quality of that queen, her brood pattern, her laying pattern. And when we take frames out of a hive, we learn as beekeepers how to read a frame. The demeanor of a colony goes a long way in telling us the quality of a honeybee queen. Are they flighty and nervous, or are they calm and do they continue to work despite us having removed them from the hive. That's the sign of a good colony and a good queen. One of the most important things to do and safe practices to keep when queen keeping is to take your time during hive inspections. We've only got one queen in a hive, so taking our time is going to keep her safer and will not disturb them as much. And going slow is a good thing to do in beekeeping anyways. This isn't a fast-paced trade. It's not a fast-paced hobby. Slow down, enjoy the moment, and enjoy what you're doing, and you will find the fulfillment that beekeeping has to offer. Chapter 8 goes over what I came up with so many years ago and I finally got into print, is the 7 methods of minimal disturbance. Possibly you've seen my videos on these, but this breaks it down. Method 1, anticipating and preparing. Method 2, rain or shine, do things on time. Method 3, observe and learn. And of course, I give you examples of how to do each of these so that when you're reading, you can apply it to your own situation and even refer to this while you're going through your beehive. Method 4, smoke the hive, help them thrive. Method 5, go in with a plan. This is one of my favorites because you've probably heard me say before, curiosity is a high-risk reason for going into a hive. You need to go in with a reason because every time you go in, you're disturbing the colony and you're putting your queen at risk. So we need to have intention in what we're doing. Method number 6, leave everything in its place. And method number 7, don't get greedy. And these aren't anything to learn in order. It's simply something to adopt overall and practice every time that you're having fun keeping your bees. And finally, Chapter 9. It ends the book with mindfulness and intention allows for that intuition that we all have this craving for and we really want deep down. And I give you five steps of how to approach your beekeeping operation and your experience with mindfulness and intention. We talk about the results of this. You're going to benefit with greater honey crops or whatever product you're after. Maybe it's beeswax for making lip balm, but the products of the hive should be a result of our mindfulness and intention. It should be a result of good beekeeping, not the primary goal. When we treat bees and our colonies like a commodity, something we can simply replace or just throw money at and make better later, we have dropped them down from a pedestal that they should be kept on. It's important to keep them here with reverence and respect. And of course, this is my opinion, but I have found that most of my students have a very similar opinion. Anyone who gets into beekeeping has something like that in their own heart. And that's what this book is about, is approaching beekeeping from the heart. I've got some references in the back here for books I refer to and of course always recommend to you in my videos. And then we end the book with beekeeping terms, glossary of beekeeping lingo. So I've got links to this book down below. You can get it through Barnes & Noble or Amazon. I appreciate all of you. It means a lot to me that you follow me here on YouTube. And I hope that this book finds a place on your shelf, but not only there, but off the shelf as well as you read it and take it to heart and apply it to your own beekeeping operation and find as much fun in it and fulfillment as I have. Until next time, thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.